thinking about finally launching your Substack newsletter, this is the moment. 2025 is shaping up to be a breakout year for Substack writers. Substack reached 5 million paid subscriptions. 50,000 creators are already earning money. To learn more, I'm joined today by Casandra Campbell, a powerhouse in business strategy and creator of really good business ideas. Casandra has spent the past 14 years growing businesses of all kinds. She helped Spotify become the fastest growing SaaS company ever. She's incredibly skilled at spotting big opportunities early. She loves data, and she's saying loud and clear, the best time to start a Substack is right now. We talked about how Substack is evolving at breakneck speed, what the platform's explosive growth really means for you, and why 2025 is the year to jump in. So, Casandra, what I know is that many say at the moment, I'm too late to the party on Substack. So my answer is always from a marketing standpoint, and also as a heavy user, no, it's definitely not too late. And I know, and you might have seen already, that I recently shared on Notes that we're currently in the early adopters phase of the product adoption curve for Substack. Even Linda LeBron from Substack, she unfortunately left Substack a few days ago. She mentioned, I do think that Substack is in its second inning. First inning was text. Second inning is audio, video, live streaming, plenty of baseball left to play. I'd love to hear your take. Where do you think we are on the curve right now? And what does that mean for new creators and writers coming in?
I still think it's probably really early. I think the average person that you know in your life outside of Substack is probably actually not really using Substack. I'm definitely finding lately everyone's starting to hear about it, but not necessarily on it yet. And especially with, many people might read a publication and not really realize it's on Substack. But when you look at Notes, most of it is still us authors that are really driving most of the interaction there. But we're seeing more and more readers join. We're seeing people who want to leave other social networks for various reasons because of leadership, things like that. X, Meta are starting to try out Substack, and we're seeing this big influx of new people. I have a chart that I can show you. So Substack recently announced 5 million paid subscriptions. Most of us probably saw this. And what was really interesting about this is they went from 4 to 5 way faster than they went from 3 to 4, 2 to 3. We saw a rapid acceleration in growth rate. And so I just kind of wanted to play out if this is the inflection point that most, companies that experience hockey stick growth go through, what would that look like? So if we see growth continuing to accelerate at an exponential rate, what would that look like? And that's really what the dotted line shows us. This is not necessarily what's going to happen, but it shows us what could be possible. And it makes me think about, if we got to 30 or 40 million paid subscriptions, what would that look like? Is that possible? And when you think about the fact that there's hundreds of millions of people that pay for streaming services like Netflix as a way to get content, it starts to seem not so crazy that maybe 30, 40 million people might go to a direct subscription directly with that creator or journalist or storyteller.
Yeah, and what signs would there be to confirm that we've then hit that inflection point? And what would that mean for writers considering whether to start on Substack or not? So what would be like these, it's called like these signs for you?
I think when we see that next growth milestone is when we'll really know for sure. And when we see that increase continue, this would mean now is really the perfect time to join, because there's been a long road of slow growth and building that we've all, those of us who've already been here, you've been here longer than me, we're helping to contribute to. But if things really are about to start to take off, now is like the first, the best time to join and get started. One earlier indicator of growth is search interest. So when we look at search interest for Substack, that has also grown significantly recently. So we can see there's first a big spike in November. I think this was probably caused by Substack's gift subscription campaign. And then in January, right before Inauguration Day, TikTok goes dark and we see it just shoot up, dark in the US. But what's really exciting to me about this is it's still elevated. So that search interest is still high. It didn't just shoot right back down, which to me is signifying that there's sustained growth that is going to continue and trickle down into those subscriptions growth.
For those who don't know about this, maybe you could be a bit more specific about, what was the Substack gift subscription campaign? And also, what was happening with TikTok for those who have no clue what happened?
I believe it was early November, and I can share the link to the announcement. Substack basically announced a gift campaign where they were going to gift subscribers subscriptions to publications, but pay for it. So it's not like you had to donate a subscription. They would pay, you would get compensated for that subscription if someone took them up on the offer. And the goal with this is really to drive app downloads and get people using the app, get them in the ecosystem, the social network. And so that seems to have driven a pretty good boost. There was a lot of press about it. It just got more people thinking about, oh, I'm using Substack. What is Substack? That's where I'm reading this. And then, of course, we have this looming TikTok ban in the US for a while now. I'm not an expert on the topic, but basically, TikTok was supposed to be sold off to a US owner. Otherwise, it was going to need to be shut down. When Trump was elected, he, made some references to we're gonna figure this out, wanting to be a little more flexible. And so as I guess a lobbying tactic, TikTok actually removed itself from the app stores, I think, basically shut the app down the day before Inauguration Day when President Trump went into office. And that created quite a stir. They keep extending this deadline for when it needs to be sold. So we don't really know what's going to happen. For now, it's still operating in the US outside of this short period where it went dark. But there's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people, a lot of creators have built their whole livelihood on this platform and are thinking about alternatives where they can have more control, have more stability. Certainly on Substack, you have this email list that you own. If the platform goes away, you can take that list with you somewhere else. And TikTok doesn't have that. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people starting to move over or at least incorporate Substack into the mix.
And I think we're also going to cover live stream and video. But for now, I know that you've described Substack's ecosystem as a strong, defensible moat. What specific parts of the platform do you believe make that moat so strong? And how do they protect both Substack and its writers in an increasingly crowded creator economy?
So Substack, probably its closest competitor is Beehive in terms of a direct competitor that has a lot of the same feature sets. And then there's, all kinds of other products that, do part of what Substack does. We're publishing content. We are able to monetize directly. We can directly get compensated for our content. Patreon's another simple example where you can do that. This is different from, say, ads. It does email marketing. You have this website. The one thing that I think is, Substack's got this whole ecosystem, and the richer that gets, the stronger the defensible moat is. But having Notes and having that social media network, I think, is really what's going to protect Substack going forward. It would be extremely hard for Beehive to replicate that because Beehive is just so much smaller than Substack already. And you just need a certain amount of users before a social media network is even useful and there's enough activity. And so to turn something like that on is really hard, and to get that supply side and demand side balanced. But Substack's already doing so well with that. We've all, I think, experienced in the past year going from, not really using Notes to Notes becoming, for many of us, the core social media network that we use. And it's so integrated with our publications and with us and the way we monetize. And so I think it's just really hard for any of, each of these other software might be better in one piece or another, but what Substack's power is that it puts all of this together and connects you directly with your readers.
I would always think, as Kit, as the biggest competitor, because I think, I know so many people who are using ConvertKit or maybe also using Substack together with ConvertKit. This is what I'm doing. So for instance, what Substack, of course, is not offering is, segmentation. So of course, as a marketer, I love segmentation, especially if it's about like courses or ebooks or whatever. So what do you think about Kit there, Casandra?
I think Kit is, for me, it's my number one choice for email automation, integrating landing pages with digital products, courses, things like that. I think we all struggle with the fact that there's no API for Substack right now. And so integrating a tool like that is really manual, and there's all kinds of issues that can arise. I'm not really doing it because I don't want to deal with like double updating lists and run into issues with one platform or the other. I may get there where I try and integrate them. I know a lot of people are doing it. Substack, if you want to create content and have this relationship with your audience and be able to monetize, that's what Substack's extremely well focused on and can help you do better than anyone else. But if you want to add more and you have this broader business and you want to be able to optimize with automations, incorporate courses and things like that, Kit's, I would, it sounds like we're probably both aligned, is like the best way to do that. But I personally wouldn't start on Kit unless I had a really niche audience that couldn't take advantage of Substack's growth features. The notes, recommendations, boost, like all of that stuff, being able to tap into that network, you just don't get that in the same way with Kit.
Yeah, and what about Patreon? Because I always say that Patreon, started this whole movement that they said, hey, for instance, a guitarist playing on YouTube, even if this person had, 200,000 subscribers there, which of course were also like followers, which, we know is like a vanity metric, they would only earn, a few bucks with that, even if it was a show. And then Patreon came along and they said, hey, you only need like this small percentage of your followers to support you, like these super fans. And if you have them, then you can, earn this recurring income. You have this sustainable business, and you don't have to, live like from paycheck to paycheck and always worrying about your show and everything. What do you think about Patreon? Because somewhere you shared that Substack is already, evolving more or even getting bigger than Patreon at the moment.
I recently looked up how many users Patreon had. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was in the single millions, though. If we think about comparing, like, is Substack, can it get only as big as Patreon, or could it get, closer to something like Netflix? I think it can get bigger than Patreon because Patreon is really quite limited. It doesn't have all of the growth levers built into it that Substack does. And, it's a lot more work. Like, every podcast host, like, go to my Patreon. I think there's a lot more friction to getting people there to support you. And it's really going to be your super fans unless you've, figured out the incentives really well. Whereas because the monetization is directly integrated with your content, even if you're podcasting, it can be on Substack. I think it's probably just more effective for content creators. But Patreon is probably still going to work better for, lots of other types of stuff out there that people want to be supported for, traveling musicians, things like that. Maybe they don't need a Substack.
Yeah, and I love this overview here that, like, for the first time, maybe also I understand what Substack is offering, because they are offering like everything: content publishing, direct monetization, email marketing, branded website, because somehow we also have with our publication a website. Some even, take everything, delete everything, and then just go on Substack. And we also have our social media network, which of course is, unique because, for instance, you don't get penalized if you link outside of the platform because Substack is not ad driven, This is something that I love. I know that you also said that Substack has been evolving at breakneck pace. Can you walk us through some of the most important product releases in the past year and which ones you think had the biggest impact on writer success or reader growth? You mentioned already podcasting, notes, and so on, so on. So I would love to learn a bit more about all these wonderful growth features.
I actually went through and charted them because I've been on the platform a little over a year and a quarter maybe. I know you've been here longer, and the whole time I've been like, wow, like constantly so impressed with the way new features are getting released, and it's getting better for me. Like that's when you get that feeling like I chose the right platform. Like it didn't have everything I wanted, but they're continuing to invest and make it better and better. And yeah, it's just been rapid, from the app to, all of the rich embeds like Twitter and data wrapper to all of the growth features like recommendations, boost, gift referrals, cross posting, all of that has come in the past couple of years. We're seeing like editor upgrades, website layout upgrades. We're seeing podcasting, video, all of these other ways of creating content getting incorporated. And so it's just been really cool to see that, yeah, this is a team that is actively working on making the product better and better. And they are trying to keep in touch with what is going to be effective, what's going to drive growth for publishers, and what do they need to grow.
And what of these features are you most exciting about?
I have to say, I don't love the analytics. And I didn't include this because it's a very minor update. There was this aesthetic upgrade to some of the charts recently. And I'm hoping that this is a first sign of further investment in that area, because it's really hard right now to do any good analysis on your publication. You need to use other tools. You need to try and export your data. It's like very messy. Me as a data owner, I'm personally very excited about that. A lot of these I got to, they were already here when I joined. So I really got to already benefit from amazing things like recommendations and notes. And I think the video is very interesting. I'm a person who likes to write. I'm most comfortable in the written medium, but video is kind of where most people, I think that's where we're spending our time online is watching video content. And so I think it's great that Substack's being forward-looking and thinking about how do we support that. Live video recently, there's now a separate video tab in the app, which I know is controversial. I think it's, it's interesting to see. And for those who don't like video, in a sense, it's almost better because now it's in a different tab. You don't have to go to that tab if you don't want video. You can stay in the notes feed or the articles feed. But if you do, you can pop over. We're doing video right now, and this is enabling us to have, a more interesting discussion than if we were to just go write an article.
Hi, it's Christina. If you're looking for more expert interviews, how-to tutorials, and real-time writing trends, come join us inside the Online Writing Club. We'd love to have you inside. Substack gives us the tools, and then we can decide which one we're gonna pick. And there is one thing I'd love to talk with you about, and it's the new Leaderboard upgrade. I think this is like the latest feature. And maybe you can summarize what you're seeing, how you like it, like the benefits, and also what could be like the downsides of this new feature.
I think a lot of the data that you can access in Substack is more vanity on the end of vanity metrics versus performance metrics that you can use to make decisions and optimize your business. And so the leaderboard is more in that end. But one thing I really like that they clarified is how the leaderboard ranking works. And it's based on annual recurring revenue. So I'm actually in the process right now of updating an analysis I did on how much publications are earning, because we now have a really strong input into a model for figuring that out. Previously, it was sort of unclear, it was not necessarily the most paying subscribers. We weren't sure what all the variables were. So I love that we know now exactly what goes into that, and enables us to see the top earning publications. What are the inputs into that? Some of them are charging more, some of them are charging less. They have more paid subscribers. And then we have this rising category, and the rising category is more ambiguous. We don't really know exactly. It seems to be related to, how quickly you're growing. It seems to be very sensitive. It can change a lot from day to day.
Yeah. During one day, it can change already. So I'm getting like emails, Christina, I'm at 59 in parenting. And then, oh, Christina, now I'm at 68. And I say, please do me a favor and also your nervous system and don't check the leaderboard. It's fine to go there when it was new. I also got a notification telling me whatever. And I was checking it. And I was there together with Nicholas Cole. And I was like, wow, this was impressive. I had to take a screenshot. But from then I said to myself, don't check the leaderboard. Otherwise, you're going like insane. Because traditionally, it was so that if you started a newsletter, you like created in a silo. It was just you writing your newsletter in this like intimate sphere in the inboxes of your subscribers. Okay, the subscribers found you somewhere, for instance, on YouTube or Medium, wherever, and then you got into the inboxes. This was amazing, and maybe and then of course people could reply, but this wasn't the thing. With Substack, it is a thing now. People can like, people can comment, people can now share, restack on notes, and it's becoming like bigger and bigger, and also the feedback you get is becoming bigger and bigger, and so people, of course, like often spending hours on the analytics instead of writing, especially if you're a part-time writer. If you're spending like an hour per day on analytics, I don't think this is the way to go. Of course, I also love data, similar to you as a brand manager. I love data. It's nice. However, it's always also cool to just listen to your heart, make it really a soulful business, because for most of us, like 90% of the writers there, it is a part-time business and it's not corporate. If it would be, of course, corporate, I would sit there and, studying all the data, la, la, la. And so I love, of course, to chat with you and with others about like the data. What can we see? What are the trends and everything? However, I would, listen to it. I would reflect on it. And then I would say, okay, this is like my approach. This is how I'm doing it. So I wouldn't like overthink everything in regard to data. How often are you like checking your, notes analytics, your publication analytics, the leaderboards and everything, Casandra? How do you stay sane in this like data-driven, vanity metric Substack world? Because I think that Substack is really going into this direction, to be honest. We had this on Medium, for instance. I always compare the leaderboard now with the top writer badges. So I had, I don't know how many, 100 of top writer badges. This was like amazing for me as a new writer. But at some point, I also knew exactly what to do to become a top writer. I helped others to become a top writer because somehow you could like game the system, or you just knew what to do. And of course, you also had to get the reads and the views and so on. Of course, you had to be a great writer for this. But I don't know, now with Substack, also with the leaderboard, and so I have the feeling it's getting more and more into the vanity metrics to reward people. And this was what I was talking with this anonymous writer Finnegan about, this reward. So a platform, social media platform that is Substack. Substack now is a social media platform because you have all these social features, wants to reward us. And those who are like complaining and saying, oh, I'm not sure, or I am new, of course, they get rewarded by the leaderboard telling them, hey, you now belong to the top 100 in parenting or whatever, So I'd like to know, what's your approach? And also, how do you, calm and relax your nervous system there?
I would imagine that the product managers are trying to create, some dopamine hits from gamification, and people share these things. So that creates a lot of buzz around Substack. I don't actually look at most of that stuff very often. I always think about what is something that's going to drive a decision and what is something that's not going to drive a decision. And if it's not going to drive a decision, it's not really all that useful. Especially, if people are getting stressed out about the leaderboard. This is something that's also true with companies in the stock market. Just because the stock, doubled overnight or went, down 50% overnight for your company, that doesn't mean their company suddenly was 50% worse the next day or suddenly 50% better the next day. And the same thing is true. Just because something went up or down, there's all of these variables. That doesn't mean that what you're doing instantly got better or worse. And so just stay the course and stay focused on what's important and where you're going. The right metrics for you are going to, in a lot of ways, depend on your goals. I'm thinking about building growth levers and a growth engine for long-term growth. And so I'm looking a lot at what's going on with my search traffic. I'm looking at my general traffic and subscription growth, my funnel I'm more just keeping a pulse on what's going on. Did anything unexpected happen? And if so, do I know why? And are the things that I'm testing and trying, are they having an effect or not? But it's really just to inform that learning about what should I do next. I mean, it's not even something I need to look at. You just kind of know when something really resonated and did well. And so you make a mental note, but you're like, okay, this really resonated with people. Either I thought that it would, or I was surprised. So now I have a hypothesis about why that is. I'm going to test that because I'm going to now try it this way, or I'm going to get in that direction and try and confirm my hypothesis and see if this thing that I learned that really helps people, I can incorporate more often. Or, this didn't have the effect that I thought it would. So maybe I'll try it again. Maybe I'll move on. I think about what information do I need to help me use my limited time more effectively to reach my goals? And if information is not really helping me make those decisions to use my time more effectively, I'm really busy. I don't care. I don't need to be checking that. I have most notifications turned off on Substack, but also everywhere, really. Like we're all getting inundated with way too much information.
And Casandra, how often are you then checking your analytics on Substack? Is it on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, or?
It's usually like 1 to 2 times a week. I'm only publishing 1 to 2 times a week. So there's not a lot of input into the system. Like a daily basis is not that helpful for me. And also it's not the only thing I have going on. Different days of the week, I may be focused on some client stuff, or, I'm teaching a course at Columbia this month. So I may be like up there teaching. And so there's also an element of, okay, today I'm going to look, I'm going to dig in. I've been wondering about XYZ. I want to keep a pulse on how this is going and take a look and then, figure out my action items from there. But definitely not daily for me. A bigger publication that's publishing, daily or multiple times a day, that might make sense.
And when we're talking about search traffic, I think this is important. This is something that a lot of people are wondering about or not wondering about and missing out on this maybe. How do you check your search traffic? And what did you do in the back end? Did you, connect it with Google Analytics or something? So what do you do? What can we learn from you, Casandra, there?
In terms of just understanding what's going on, I do use Google Analytics. That gives you much more information about your traffic. Because you've published an article doesn't mean it's not still useful. So read articles, they're getting read every week because, people are coming across them in Google. So they're still helping those people. They're still helping my publication grow because some of those people then subscribe. And so Google Analytics is a really good way to understand all of that traffic. It's a lot harder to do in Substack, especially by post. And then Search Console is really important specifically for search traffic. Search Console is basically like this interface between you and Google. You can share information with your website about Google. I want you to include this web page in search results. I want to make sure that you know what this page is about. And Google can say, hey, we can't read this page. There's an issue with this page. So it's a way to have that two-way communication and really understand what is going on, how your website is doing in search, where there's problems, where there's opportunities. And then, really the simplest approach is, you want to try and be strategic about keywords because some keywords are just way too competitive. You're never going to rank for it. And sometimes we think we want to write about a keyword, but no one's searching it. And so it's okay if it's useful for your subscribers to write it, but it's not going to bring you new traffic if nobody is searching for that topic. And so you want to balance, where's their demand? Where are people looking for that I feel that I can really provide value and give them that, and that it's not going to be too hard for me to rank. So I use a tool called Ahrefs for that, to basically do that keyword research. And then sometimes I look and I find specific keywords where I think there's a really good opportunity. I think this is in line with what I write about. And I can really create a great article about this keyword. So I'm going to plan it in my content calendar and create it. Sometimes I have an idea that, for a different reason, I got the idea for this article. I had a friend one time ask me, hey, can you email people outside of sending your newsletter, can you email your subscribers? And I said, oh yeah, you can. I sort of explained how it worked. And then I thought maybe other people have that question. So I made that article. I didn't see a search for that. My friend asked me that question. That's how I got the idea. And so for those situations, I will go and look, is there a keyword? How do people talk about this? Are they saying it this way? Are they saying it that way? What kind of questions, like the related keywords, what other questions do they have about this topic that I might not have thought of that I can address? And so I'll go and look and see if there is something I can incorporate. If there is, great. And if not, that's okay too. And then that way I'm just, from both directions, making sure that I'm leveraging search engines as much as I can, because almost all website traffic comes from search engines. That's how we navigate the web, especially if you want to get outside of your existing subscribers, your existing customers, and people who know you. That's really how we're all discovering things. And it's really an amazing way to get discovered, because those people, it's very timely. They're looking for something and then you give them what they're looking for. Versus when you tweet something, maybe someone comes across it on Twitter, it's not really related to them or it's not the right time for them. But when you make a search and you're looking for something and then you get the result that you need, that's when you're going to come, you're going to spend a lot of time, you're more likely to subscribe. We call it a very high intent traffic source. It's just so powerful. I really want everyone to try and tap into it.
And there are some who think they then, with your tool also, they found their keywords and then they would have, like old school, just put this keyword like 10 times into their text.
Yeah.
Would you agree on this or not?
You do want to put the keyword in the SEO title for sure. I do the URL. You don't necessarily need to do the meta description. These are things that are in the SEO settings in Substack if you haven't used it before. So you want to have your keyword in the SEO title there, even if it's not in your article headline, because maybe you want a different subject line. In the URL, you can customize that. The meta description is really like conversion copywriting. So that is what might show up on the search results page. Do you want to entice people to click on you and not one of the other search results? But then I really am just trying to do a really good job of give that searcher what they're looking for. So when I'm creating that content, I'm thinking about what are the questions they have? What would be the best way to answer this question or give them what they're looking for? And I'm really just trying to do the best possible job, because Google will often test things and it'll see based on your keyword usage, okay, we know what this is about. If you write naturally, as long as you use it in the title and things like that, they can tell. Now we know what this is about. We're going to test it on the first page and see what happens. And it's very much like a social media algorithm. If people are clicking, they're staying, they're subscribing, they're engaging, then Google knows it's a good search result and it will continue to surface that. If your content is not really relevant to the keyword or it's not really that great, people will go back to Google and they see that. And so it will rank that as well. So the most important thing is create something really great for that keyword. And as long as you're using it a few times, most likely Google will know what it's about.
And what about paywalls? Many are interested in, maybe they are writing long form posts, in depth posts where they're sharing, lots of research, spend hours on this. And then they say, hey, I have to paywall this at some point. What's going to happen with this if then Google sends people to this answer on your Substack and you would have monetized it?
So there is a setting where you can allow search engines to index paywall content. So I have that turned on. When I'm really going for a keyword, I will, especially if it's more competitive, I will typically leave it open because I don't want people to leave because they hit the paywall. I'm using that further up the funnel to get people in, get them subscribing, and then later upgrading. But I've had articles that, ranked unexpectedly and they were created more, especially, for me, when I do business opportunity analysis, that's paywall because it's intentionally meant for a small group of people. If everyone can see it, it's not useful. So the small group of paid subscribers are the only ones that have access to it. They have that competitive advantage. That's sort of the whole point of what I'm doing. I don't want to have it out there. So that's going to be paywall no matter what. But I actually see some of those articles have been consistently ranking over a year now. And so maybe it's just there's nothing better that's free. And so even if, some people are bouncing back, it's still ranking. But I will say I've had the highest paid conversion rate from Google as a traffic. So I actually think chatbots have been highest, but the volume is very small. The most paid subscribers have come from Google. So I do think it works.
And when we're talking about search, I also know that you shared that, for instance, in April 2020, Substack really took off. This was the start of the pandemic. Why do you think then, you showed this already, why do you think that Substack continued to succeed and, could maintain its growth post-pandemic, while platforms like Zoom, Clubhouse, or Medium, for instance, they couldn't and they didn't?
We can't really see it on this graph here, but a platform like Zoom became extremely useful very quickly overnight. And a lot of platforms like this had what's called a pull forward. So we even had this at Shopify. We had a pull forward where you have this big increase in demand, but what you were basically doing is robbing from your future self. So more people started buying things online because of COVID. So Shopify experienced a big increase in demand. But a lot of those people that started buying online because of COVID, they would have started buying more things online anyway in 3 months, 6 months, a year. So we just took those people that were going to start using Zoom, start doing more e-commerce, and we moved it all, we bunched it all together because this big thing happened. And then what happens after is you regress back to the path that you were already on. And so you see growth decline, and then it sort of levels off where you were before, and then it continues at the pace you were at before. Substack bucked that trend, right? Substack just has grown and grown and grown. And I think part of it is because it was already on a higher growth rate than a lot of these other products. So it was already primed to, it was new. It had so much growth ahead of it. But I think probably there's also all of these other factors. There's all of this, we have so many creators that have concerns about social and algorithms and being at the whims of these platforms. We have all of these layoffs that are happening, have been happening for a long time in journalism and things like that. We have, at least in North America, people who have less and less trust in traditional journalism. A lot of these companies are owned by billionaires who are clearly trying to shape, what's published and things like that. And then I think Substack did a really good job of investing in, the features that keep people on the platform and growing, coming out with the app and recommendations and referrals and really making it sticky so that people keep using it and creators keep using it. I think we just continued to see that influx. Probably it was just really good timing for Substack that happened right as Substack was getting its footing as a newer product and really starting to get known.
What would you tell us about Medium? Because Medium, for instance, now has these 1 million paid members. Substack has 5 million paid subscriptions and is growing. We have now more than 50,000 publishers getting paid, I guess now even more. And Medium used to be the main competitor in author-driven content publishing. So what do you think about, this milestone that they somehow surpassed Medium with these 5 million subscriptions?
Ideally, they're working together, or you just consider that they have different strengths and weaknesses. Substack is better for me because I want to go really deep with a more niche audience, but Medium is going to be better. There's a lot of people that say, I want to start a Substack, but I don't know what I want to write about. I kind of want to write about everything. And it's a lot harder to build an audience without a clear sort of topic or value proposition, because people subscribe because of the promise of what you're going to give them. And so when that's constantly changing, it's harder to build that audience. But Medium is a great place for that because you're not building your own audience in the same way. But you are tapping into this big audience and you're able to share, content on all kinds of topics. And so for a more general or a more storytelling driven approach, that might be the better platform for some people. I definitely know monetization is precarious there. I've seen a lot of people, you can probably tell us more about this, but there's been a lot of people lately who've been posting about changes and issues. And so you're never going to have the same stability as when you own your audience, you're monetizing directly with your audience. It's probably going to be a great platform for a lot of people. What I really recommend, if starting a Substack publication makes sense for you, is to do both. One thing we're really lucky about, when you publish the same content on different websites, what can happen is you compete with yourself. Google is not going to rank the same thing twice. So it will pick one version and it will only rank that version. And so you don't want people going to Medium. If you have your own website, you want them to come to your site where they can subscribe. You want to own that relationship. But Medium has a built-in feature where you can just let Google know, hey, this is a copy. This is already published on another website. And Google will disregard it if it's functioning properly. So I say do both, like build your audience on Substack, also publish on Medium. If you want to get into media monetization and spend time on that, you need to be building an audience there, getting into publications there, getting boosts, things like that. But even if not, even if you just want to have something automated, you can just import your articles, make sure you have that canonical feature enabled. And then you've got also just some links pointing back to your publication. So it's just helping to build your exposure. So I think a hybrid model is probably great for a lot of people. It doesn't need to be one or the other.
Oh, you're already writing on Substack. You'll definitely want to meet Casandra for more. Join the Online Writing Club, join our live masterclass with her, and keep up with the latest news and trends. And I know that you changed your Substack newsletter, so you're not going with, cassandra.substack.com. You're now going with reallygoodbusinessideas.com. So you have your custom domain. When you have your custom domain, then the high domain authority of Substack changes. So the cool thing really is similar to Medium, that you have this high domain authority of more than 90. So when you start a blog, then it starts with only one. So if you are on Substack or a Medium, the cool thing is that even if you're totally new, you can already rank on page 1 on Google with your Medium story or your Substack story. Now you change this and you have your custom domain similar to mine with the Online Writing Club. Would you recommend it? Why would you recommend it? And in the back end, do you already see that you're getting a higher domain authority over the weeks or over the months? Or are you still, I don't know, is it like on a plateau or something? And what are you doing to increase this domain authority?
I do recommend it because I think if you're building a long-term sustainable business, it's really, I think, great to just own your brand and have that branded domain. I think it just gives you that brand authority in sort of the eyes of the people that are interacting with your brand. It gives you a little more flexibility with some of the Substack features. When you're on a subdomain of a big domain, you're not necessarily getting that much benefit. On Medium, you're not on the subdomain, you're on the Medium domain, your articles, so they can get that boost. On Substack, you're on a subdomain of the Substack domain, which works a little differently. It doesn't provide the same boost. I don't really keep track of my domain authority. I always knew I wanted to have a branded domain, so I set that up from day one. Domain authority for me is like a vanity metric. Like it's useful when I'm looking at, let's say I'm comparing two websites that I want to try and get a link from, and maybe I'm going to pitch a guest post. Which one is better? That might be an input into my decision. Relevance and traffic would be higher. But for me, my domain authority, it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to grow my search traffic, and that's really what I'm looking at day in, day out. Over time, it will naturally grow as the domain becomes more authoritative. But it's also one of those metrics where it's kind of made up. Like it's based on a bunch of assumptions and it's not even from Google. It's like, a tool provider's best guess at how much bias Google might have towards this domain, but we're seeing more and more lately that, traffic and relevance are more important than backlinks and domain, like strong domains.
Yeah, I love this because again, many people are like overthinking this and then saying, "No, I want to go." You're right about that. This like a subdomain on Substack or Medium is different because you're on the Medium domain, and I also think that again, looking into the future, I definitely do this and say, "Hey, I'm 100% sure that the name of my publication or the brand I want to build online is this and that." So the online writing club, for instance, and that's why I'm going with this. I'm having this custom domain on Substack. You then have to pay these $50 to get this custom domain, and then they're gonna link your past subdomain always to this custom domain, which I definitely would recommend because again, also if you're saying that everything should be like linked to this Substack page or Substack newsletter, I would always go with my own something that I again like own, similar to what Casandra and I now have with our newsletters.
And if you ever were to leave Substack for whatever reason, you can set up those redirects much more easily in your own domain than Substack's custom domain. So you can just, for your readers, it won't change. The URL will stay exactly the same. You can import your list somewhere else. You can import your Stripe subscription somewhere else. You can set up redirects for your domain name. I hope, I hope I don't have to leave. I don't feel that I should leave. I'm loving being on the platform. But if for some reason you did, it's going to be a lot easier.
And everything we talked about now, Casandra, does this like motivate you? Do you believe in Substack? Also like in Substack's vision and Substack as a platform and all the features they are shipping? And do you think that you can make Substack a serious income stream for you?
I think definitely upper funnel. I think it's such a powerful platform, and I'm really happy that this is where I decided to start this newsletter and build this brand. Like continuously every month, I feel more and more validated in that decision. I'm probably not someone who wants to monetize primarily on a paid subscription, just because I want to do something that's going to appeal to a more niche audience. So for me, it's also about courses and client work and things like that. And that stuff is better automated on other platforms. I would love to see more of that integrated with Substack, but I know that's also not necessarily core of Substack's mission. But there's no better place to build a newsletter audience right now. And there's only two things that you own on the web. It's your email list and your domain name, right? Like social media platforms, including notes, you're at the whims of the algorithm. You can take your content elsewhere, but you can't guarantee that you're going to reach your audience unless you have that email address or, if you had a home address or a phone number. And so I think absolutely, if you're trying to build a list, there's no better place to do it right now than Substack, especially if you are a content creator, an educator, anything like that.
Maybe you would want to share a bit like behind the scenes and tell us a bit more about your funnel, or I always call it like the hourglass, because it's more than a funnel. Many think that it ends with a paid subscription or selling a course or something. I always say it starts there, especially if you're going like with a paid subscription. So for instance, I always shared, the funnel would be, I would write on Medium, for instance, then I would try to convert these followers into subscribers, and then these like casual or free subscribers into paid subscribers. And this is like the end, but it's not the end. As you know, you have then, of course, to keep these subscribers happy and to provide the value. I know value, means different things for different people, but again, and so at the bottom, I don't see like the paid subscription or I don't see like the paid course or whatever it is. I more see that it then go like this funnel opens again, and there it's about like retention, getting to know each other, building community, building this relationship with this individual person, and so on and so on. And that's why I'm saying you don't have to have like 10,000 of people on your list. Going with paid subscribers again, you don't have to have 10,000 paid subscribers, because if your goal is to build relationships, community, and everything, then you're gonna see, even me with more than 350 members, it's not so easy to take care of all of them. They have lots of questions, and this is not what's going to happen in the comments or in the chat. This is what's going to happen in the direct messages. This is what's happening in the community. This has happened via email, and people asking you questions. And so you spend per day at least, or could at least spend an hour or so from your part-time 2 to 3 hours you have on answering questions and so on. How you're and where which role Substack plays in this funnel or in this hourglass?
Substack, I'm really just trying to build that list and the brand right now. Have been doing client work forever and ever, but I wanted to have a way to help more people that couldn't necessarily hire me and give this really high quality insight and analysis to more people. And so this is a way for me to, both through the analysis and the opportunities themselves, help more people access that, but also teaching other people how to do it, how I think. Paid subscribers get access to all of that. And then also they can book office hours with me or get DM support. And so it's much more lightweight way where people can just ask me a quick question, get unstuck, get some feedback on something. And then I'll work with people in bigger capacity where, we're working together over several months and we're digging into, we're creating a set of goals, or we're focusing on an outcome we want or a decision we're going to make, and working on that together. And then what I'll introduce soon is some courses and things like that. I have a few things that I'm building right now, but the first year was really just building the growth engine. I took a lot of time off of my online personal brand while I was at Shopify. So building that back up, getting all the levers. And then this year, it's kind of like go time on starting to pull those levers.
Hey, it's Christina. I started from 0 and now I've grown to over 12,000 subscribers. If I can do it, you absolutely can do it too. You don't need a huge following, fancy tech skills, or a perfect plan. All you need is to start. And if you want support while you do, join us inside the Online Writing Club. You'll find tutorials, interviews, courses, and a community that actually gets what you're trying to build. And I think there is one more burning question I had from the community when I shared that I'm going to talk with you. What do you think about like getting paid beyond Substack? Because as you shared, for instance, you don't have these one-time purchases and so on. You can't just say, hey, I'm having this bootcamp, this course, this whatever there. Of course, you can then add it to the navigation bar or at the bottom of your story or write a whole newsletter about it. But this is not really what Substack is for. And Substack doesn't want to be a place where you're just out there to sell your courses and everything. But you can go like beyond this. And one of the ways there is, of course, to go with ads. You can go with affiliate links. You can go with sponsorships, for instance. So I'd love to know from you, what would be like your recommendations? Are you experimenting with this already? And what do you think about this like long-term? Do you think this is like a long-term approach with ads and sponsorships and so on?
My plan is to start experimenting with that this year. I think the revenue potential is not going to be that high until your list reaches a certain size, because advertisers, they're thinking about how many people are we going to reach and how much we usually pay to reach that many people. In Substack, it's not, you can't put like an AdSense code on your website and just automatically populate ads or tap into other networks for email advertising. But in some ways, I think that makes for a better reader experience. I know I read a few publications that usually have a sponsored, something in the content, and it's usually very tailored to the audience. So it's highly relevant, and it's not just whatever random, stuff is like coming up based on demographics or whatever. So it's very tailored, it's highly relevant. And it's usually more naturally integrated. So there's a bit more work to this. In some capacity, find the advertisers. I've had a few people reach out to me based on the revenue potential. It's not a priority for me right now. I'm prioritizing other things. But there's platforms I'm going to set up on Passion Fruit as an example for a way. Some people post it on their publication. Hey, this is how it works. This is how to book a spot. So you need to figure out that you and the advertisers need to find each other. And then you need to make sure that you feel good about what you're including and that it's relevant to the content if that's important to you, and that the, writing and all of that matches. And then, you just place it in. But I don't think people should discount it, especially if if you want to build a bigger audience. Free is better. You're going to grow faster with free, particularly if you have a bigger audience that you do want to monetize without paywalling. It's a great way to do it. It's a little bit of manual work, but it also doesn't need to be that bad. If you are having one sponsor per newsletter, for example.
And Casandra, I know you live in New York. I told you that I also visited New York during my honeymoon, and I know that you love to surf. Can you already surf right now, or do you have to wait, I don't know, a few weeks or months before you can then hop on the surfboard?
I just surfed on Saturday last. So I surf year round in New York on the Atlantic Ocean. We don't always get waves every day like you do on the Pacific coast. So when we get waves, we got to take advantage. And also, it's just so fun. I couldn't go without doing it for months at a time. I do a lot of travel to surf as well. But when we're here in the winter, we put on wetsuits. We have wetsuit hoods, wetsuit mitts, wetsuit boots. So we just put all the gear on. I'm not usually cold. I always compare it to skiing. It's like if you want to go skiing, it's really annoying. You have to put all these different layers on and get everything on in the right order and just like schlep out to the hill with all of your stuff. It's kind of like that. You got to get all of the gear on. It's kind of annoying. But then once you get out there, you have a great time.
And do you go then surfing with your hobby or with friends, or do you love it to, go on your own?
Both. Yeah. I mean, I try not to surf totally alone just for safety. I always think just in case I wiped out and my board hit my head and knocked me out, it would be nice if someone around, saw and could call for help. Sometimes if there's people walking on the beach, I might go out alone. But usually we have kind of a crowded break here. A lot of people, New York's a big city. So a lot of people like to surf, and in a big city, even a small percentage of people is a lot of people. So there's usually people out. My husband doesn't have the same flexibility in hours as I do, so we don't always get to surf together. I can go more often than he can. And I have a lot of friends in my community. It's a surfing community. So pretty easy to find a surf buddy when you need someone to go out with. But sometimes it's nice to just go out and just be focused on surfing and the waves. And that's very different from a social session where you're going to hang out and catch up, but you might miss some waves because of that.
Does being on the surfboard and living or enjoying the blue zone, does this influence your writing and your online business?
I don't know if it directly impacts my writing, but definitely just my wellness and mindset overall. I don't know if other people feel this, but when I can see the horizon, I really feel like that has such a positive mental health effect on us. And so I think it's just, being near the ocean and being near nature can really help me feel calm. And with surfing, one thing that's really cool about it is you can't bring your phone out there, and you have to be really, really present. You always have to be paying attention to what's going on in the ocean and adapting and adjusting just to stay safe, let alone if you want to catch a wave and ride it, which is really fun. So you do. And so there's nothing else I've ever done in life where I am as fully focused and present as I am when surfing. And for me, getting in the ocean always just makes me feel none of that stuff matters. I used to, when I would there'd be so much, everyone's so stressed and there's so much going on at work. And most of it's all made up, right? Like we create these systems and goals and whatever. We create it all. They're all concepts. And I would go out into the ocean and think, none of it even really matters. Like, it's all good. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah, Casandra, I have the feeling many people will or have already fallen in love with you and everything. Maybe they love to surf, or they love to surf the wave that is the big wave, this buzzy wave that is Substack at the moment. What would be like your, let's call it like pep talk, or your call to action for everyone listening or watching this right now and thinking about Substack and the future of Substack and so on? What would you want to tell them?
I would say if you haven't started, just start. Any business that you're building, even if it's not a business, you're building this audience for some other reason, the biggest input is time. And the sooner you start, the more you can get the benefit of time. You know, in a year, you'll look back and think, oh, thank God I started this. Like, what if I hadn't? Versus a year goes by and you think, what could I have accomplished in that year? So don't wait until you're ready. If you wait until you're ready, you'll never start and it'll be too late. So just, get going, take those steps. I really think it's wonderful for anyone to build an audience. Even if you're not building a business, that audience gives you all kinds of leverage. If you want to publish a book one day, if you want to get a speaking engagement, maybe you're trying to get a job in your industry, anything that you can build that audience for and get traction around, it's going to give you leverage that you can use in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be a business that you are fully supporting yourself with. Building an audience always has a lot of leverage, but an audience where you can guarantee that you can reach people, like email, is going to be much more valuable than social, where you don't know for sure if they'll see your posts.
Yeah, and if we would now want to get in contact with you, Casandra, what's the best way to do that?
Reallygoodbusinessideas.com. You can find my publication. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, growth, data-driven business opportunities, feel free to subscribe. You can DM me in the app.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you so much. It was delightful.
Yeah, I had so much fun talking. Thank you.
If you're feeling inspired, don't stop here. You can binge the full Substack Success playlist right now. It's packed with practical tips, real creator stories, and the exact steps to help you grow your soulful newsletter in a way that feels doable and true to you and your heart.